When I moved into Pinewood Grove, I had three simple goals: keep my lawn tidy, stay out of trouble, and enjoy a cup of coffee without someone yelling about garbage cans or mailbox rules. I never imagined that within 2 days, I'd be accused of hiding raccoons, hit with a DO Law 200 fine for a fence color I didn't even violate, and facing off with a woman who'd soon regret crossing me. She pegged me as just another naive homeowner. But I'm a real estate attorney and she just made the costliest mistake of her life. It all kicked off on a cool Saturday morning. I just unpacked my last box, stretched my aching back like a guy twice my age, and treated myself to a steaming mug of dark roast. This house was my retreat after years of brutal litigation, high-stakes property battles, and courtroom chaos that left even veteran judges rubbing their temples. I was done with that life. I craved peace. Birds singing, grass under my feet. No suits, no contracts, just quiet suburbia. For about 5 minutes I had it. Then she showed up. She didn't knock, just loomed at the edge of my porch, clipboard in hand, 3 little dogs yapping like they were auditioning for an alarm company. She wore giant sunglasses, a baby blue tracksuit bright enough to guide planes, and a look that said she'd already judged me guilty of something. "Hi, I'm Linda," she chirped, her voice a mix of forced friendliness and deep-seated control. "I'm the acting president of the Pinewood Grove HOA. We like to ensure new folks settle in right." It wasn't a question. I smiled, sipped my coffee, and acted like I hadn't just met a walking spam email. She launched into a spiel about neighborhood standards, lawn consistency, holiday decor rules, trash can protocol, fence alignment codes. I swear she even mentioned something about birdhouse size limits. I nodded politely, but inside I was cataloging every word. When she handed me a sheet titled Non-Compliant Observations, I thought it was a joke. My welcome mat featuring a cheerful sunflower was apparently too solely disruptive. By Monday, an official violation notice was crammed into my mailbox like a desperate plea. The crime? My mailbox didn't meet HOA specs. I checked it straight, black, identical to everyone else's. Except hers. Linda's had silver trim, fancy engraving, and a tiny solar light. Interesting. Instead of griping, I went full suburban. Baked a loaf of zucchini bread, dropped it at her door with a note saying, "Thanks for the warm welcome." The next day, I got fined again for unauthorized composting. I didn't even own a compost bin. By Wednesday, Linda upped the ante. She parked outside my house to inspect my shrubs. I waved, she didn't. Another notice arrived at me: porch light was excessively bright. I started wondering if she had a telescope. That evening, I caught her at a cul-de-sac meeting, lording over a group of anxious residents who nodded like trained seals. She spotted me, flashed a fake smile, and waved. I waved back, not out of friendliness, but because I was strategizing. Linda wasn't just enforcing rules, she was inventing them on the fly: no votes, no oversight. The fear in those neighbors' eyes told me this HOA wasn't just strict, it was rotten. And Linda? She was its dictator. That night, I cracked open my laptop, poured another coffee, and dug into the HOA bylaws. Pages of standard stuff, but buried in there were red flags: no election records, unsigned amendments, financials that didn't add up. It wasn't just sketchy, it was unlawful. Linda had waded so far into the deep end she was drowning and didn't know it. I grinned. This wasn't about a mailbox anymore. It was personal. I kept my cool. The next morning, Linda strutted onto my lawn, pointing at a lone weed like it was a felony. "You'll want to handle that," she said, dead serious. "Oh, for sure," I replied. "Wouldn't want to break any community rules." She smirked. I smiled bigger. As she marched off, dogs and clipboard in tow, she thought she'd found her next victim. She had no clue she'd picked her last fight. By the end of week 1, I had a folder labeled Linda, stuffed with every violation notice, every bylaw glitch, and every oddball comment she'd made within earshot. Most folks would have moved or hired a gardener to keep the peace. Me? I'm wired differently. Linda didn't realize the guy she was harassing had once made a tycoon cry over a zoning technicality. This wasn't ending with a polite letter, it was heading for a reckoning. It started small. Jogging one afternoon, I noticed a new fountain in Linda's yard, water trickling over a statue of her 3 noisy dogs. HOA rules banned water features without approval. I asked neighbors if they'd voted on it. Nope, Linda just did it. I dug into the records expecting transparency. Instead, I found a mess: half-finished forms, skipped elections, and what looked like Linda's shopping list clipped to the landscaping budget. She'd been acting president for 7 years. Bylaws capped terms at 2. I had EVY Denke. But with someone like Linda, you don't charge and you let her think she's winning until she signs her own downfall. That chance came fast. A notice hit my door: emergency HOA meeting, mandatory attendance at Linda's house. I showed up early, curious and testing her. She looked rattled. There were cheese cubes, a bowl of neon orange punch, and 6 homeowners scattered like shy kids at a party. Linda kicked off the meeting like a caffeinated tyrant, reading a REVY set compliance agreement, with gems like mandatory paint color REVYUs and a 6-inch lawn ornament cap. I raised my hand. She ignored me. I raised it again. Yes, Mark, she snapped. Just a question about the election cycle, I said. Who voted on these changes? She froze, then said, we covered this last quarter. Unanimous. Funny records showed no meeting, no vote. I smiled. Great, I'll check the minutes. She blinked. The meeting fizzled out awkwardly. Next morning, my car was towed parked an inch over the cul-de-sac line. Linda had it hauled at dawn. The driver muttered, she does this. Got 4 cars last month. Her first jab. She expected me to rant. Instead, I called an old PI buddy. 2 days later, I had Linda Harris's file, past addresses, associates, and property records. She'd been quietly buying foreclosed homes in Pinewood Grove under her sister's husband's name, finding owners into default, then flipping the properties. Clever. Illegal. I could have gone to the cops, but that'd be too quick. Linda deserved a slow unraveling. 2 more fake notices hit my door. One for unauthorized pruning, another for non-recyclable emotional support items in my recycling. Hilarious. She was slipping. I fired back, requesting a full HOA financial audit as a dues-paying member, sent VY certified mail and taped to her fancy mailbox. No reply, but neighbors started whispering. They came to me with tales, random fines, canceled meetings, rules bent for Linda's whims. Some were scared, some mad, all wanted change. So I gave them a plan: follow the rules, hold a vote, document everything, file legally. We'd beat her at her own game. By the weekend, I was a quiet legend in Pinewood Grove. Neighbors nodded cautiously like I'd tamed a wild dog. Linda struck again, a sign on my door in red marker, property under REVYEW, surveillance in progress, and a new camera aimed at my house, installed without permits by her nephew's company. I snapped photos, checked city codes, filed a complaint, and waved at the lens. 2 nights later, my trash had orange stickers. Improper sorting, fine pending. A banana peel was in my plastics bin. I don't eat bananas, someone planted it. At the midweek potluck, I let my guard down a bit. Linda was bossing teens around the dessert table. I strolled up with sparkling water. Well, if it isn't our eager newbie, she sneered. Brought drinks, Linda, I said. No bananas. A few laughed. She didn't. A neighbor shook my hand. You're Mark, right? Help the Petersons with that fence issue. Happy to, I said. Real estate law's my thing. Linda's voice cut in. Oh, an attorney? Mostly zoning, fraud, HA overreach, I replied. Silence. Her smile thinned. The tide was turning. That weekend, I hosted a backyard meeting: lemonade, bylaws, and a plan. Neighbors strategized. Legal rights, Linda's violations, a proper challenge. We formed the Fairgrove crew, not for a takeover, but for order. By Monday, 3 homeowners filed disclosure requests. Linda ignored them. Too bad, we'd sent them certified. She retaliated. A code officer showed up, claiming I ran a business from home. I've been sipping lemonade and explaining rules, I said. He sighed, checked, and left. The crew grew. We had 10 members, tasks assigned. Code research, expense tracking. A team built a site, Linda Watch, with every violation logged. Then we found it. A doula $122,450 landscaping consultation receipt to her brother-in-law's shell company. Game over. A subpoena hit Linda's door on Thursday. She emailed the neighborhood, blaming disgruntled residents, and me, the misinformed newbie. Too late, the audit was rolling. At her last-ditch HOA meeting, Linda rambled about tradition, VY Timhood, and leadership. I asked, how's a doula $122,450 payment go to a company with no equipment, run by your brother-in-law? Gasps. She stumbled. Her deposition was a train wreck absurd. The accountant's report nailed her, due law 60,000 misappropriated. Criminal charges loomed. A teen coder, Sophie, built a VY-RAL database of Linda's actions, fines, favoritism, harassment. Linda's legal threats flopped. The city suspended the HOA and her house went up for sale. In court, facts buried her: restitution, removal, a 10-year ban. Neighbors exhaled. We rebuilt elections, transparency, real community. I became president, 1 term only. Linda's house Saldi handled the closing. A twist of fate. "Good morning, Linda," I said. She signed, jaw tight, and left. Pinewood Grove breathed free. Truth and action had won.